Mon nom c'est Jean-Louis Deveau. Ça me fait plaisir de vous souhaiter la bienvenue ici ce soir. On est bien content que vous soyez avec nous pour notre séance de questions et réponses aux personnes qui se présentent comme candidats pour les prochaines élections provinciales. Before I explain to you who the host of this meeting is, the Council of Canadians, I would like to acknowledge that we are on unceded Indigenous territory known as Wolastoq. And I would like to ask Grand Chief Ron TREMBLAY to come and say a few opening remarks. Grand Chief TREMBLAY.
Quick, Lewin. Dimta Gadawi Kolazi called by the Wolastoq. Wolastoq Gawi Gneelon. Dimta Yod Gizi Wiggle Diag Beach. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the candidates here and the people, and to welcome you to our non-ceded territory of Wolastoq and this beautiful river we call it Wolastoq. And Wolastoq, it translates to beautiful and bountiful river. We reclaimed the name Wolastoq this June, and we are possibly going to ask the candidates here to respond if they support this change, because we were not consulted back in 1604 for that name to be changed. So. And as I was driving here, I was thinking, wouldn't it be something if the Wolastoq, the Mi'kmaq, and the Passamaquoddy had representation at the legislature, how things would be different. We'd be the voice of reason. Because we are the original people from here, we can speak on behalf of the trees, the animals, the birds, the water, the air, the fish, and all of life. Because whether we believe it or not, we need all of that to live. Thank you and good luck. Lewin, Tom.
Thank you. Okay, so who is the Council, or what is the Council of Canadians? The Council of Canadians was established in 1985 in Ottawa, and its goals are threefold. First, to promote economic and social justice. Second, to protect Canada's cultural and natural resources. And third, to create a living democracy. The lifeblood of the Council of Canadians are 60 chapters that exist across Canada. The Fredericton chapter was established in 2012 specifically to raise awareness about shale gas. Members of our chapter meet every Wednesday night, every first Wednesday of the month at Conserver House, which is located at 180 St. John Street. And we would like to take this opportunity, or I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of those who support the types of initiatives that we are involved in to come and join us. To organize an event like this tonight takes a pile of work, as you can probably imagine. Somebody has to contact candidates, make sure that they're available. Somebody has to print out the flyers. Somebody has to distribute those flyers to all of those mailboxes. We have to have somebody go and pick up the food. We need an MC, who this evening is going to be one of our members, Maggie Connell. And I don't often get an opportunity to thank all of the people who work so hard to make these types of events happen. So I would like to take this opportunity right now, because we obviously, based on the number of people we have here tonight, we will not get a chance, with most likelihood, to do so at the end. So please join me in giving a huge round of applause for those of us who make it possible for this to happen. Thank you. Now, before I hand the mic over to Maggie, I just have one small request. Again, to put together an event like this costs money. It costs upwards of $200. The Council of Canadians accepts no money from corporations or from government. We rely strictly on donations. So I would ask that you please be generous and make a small contribution to our donation buckets. And I believe there's a glass one in the room somewhere as well. So on that note, glass cups, or rather plastic cups. I was told to mention that these are all recyclable. They are made of plant material, so please don't throw them in the trash. We'd like to recycle them. And the second thing that I was asked to mention is that anyone who's interested in getting news from the Fredericton chapter of the Council of Canadians, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. So that's it for me. Please help me welcome Maggie Connell.
Not true. He does get an opportunity to thank us a lot. He just doesn't do it, that's all. I'm just blown away. This is wonderful. Look at you all. Can we have a round of applause for you folks? I was sitting there in the front row and I overheard somebody say, "Tonight's decision night for me." And I was thinking, that's exactly what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be a place where you can come, get your questions answered, and make an informed decision. And if everybody in New Brunswick did that, wow. So good for you. Good for you. Okay, so we'll get started. I just want to let you know how the evening will roll out. And I'm not very tall, but boy, oh boy, I have big boots. So I'll really stick to this schedule. Okay, and at 9 o'clock, we want you to leave here having a much better understanding of how you're going to vote. All right, we're going to start with some introductory remarks from each of our candidates, whom I will introduce shortly. So everybody here will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and add a few remarks. And we have Gary in the front here. He's got 2 flags. The yellow flag means in 30 seconds your time is up. That's going to apply to you folks as well. Okay? 30 seconds left. So say it quickly. And at the red flag, you're done. And I will make sure that that happens. The other thing is, so we have our introductory remarks, and then we will have questions from you folks. You're going to line up at the mic, and if you want a chance to get your word in, you've got to line up because the line gets very long very quickly. You have 2 minutes. Make your questions very specific and pointed, okay? Now we're going to ask that the only questions that are going to come to the mic are going to be the Fredericton South folks. So when you come to the mic, please state your name and the area in which you live. So there are the areas there. Please identify which one is yours when you come to the mic. Thank you. In terms of responses, after that question is asked, we're going to rotate the start. So the first one, the first response will start with you. The second question, the response will start there and we'll rotate. Okay, so everybody gets a chance to be first and last. All right, so we've got the flags out of the way. You know, it's interesting. When you get into politics or religion or anything that creates a lot of heat, you get people really, you know, it's a very passionate thing, right? You get people wandering off in their own thoughts and that sort of thing. So every once in a while, you're going to hear me do some spot checks. So I will be asking the people at the mic, is your question being answered? Okay? And just be aware that that will happen. That doesn't mean it's not. It just means that's what I'm going to do. And at 8:45, we'll do a closing, and each of the candidates will once again have 2 minutes to give us some closing remarks, and then we'll wrap it up. And I will remind you at the end that there's a donation bucket there. Okay? So, can we introduce our candidates, please? Oh, there's one other thing I want to add to this, is that this is a classy event. We really are putting a real emphasis on respect here. We don't all line up with everybody's opinion on politics, that's for sure. but we're going to respect it. So we're asking all participants respect each of the candidates, no matter who's speaking or what they're saying. You can disagree, but it's got to be respectful. We're asking the candidates to please respect the fact that all these people have come out in the rain to inform their vote and give them some specific, direct answers quickly. And we're going to ask the participants in the audience, please respect each other whether you agree or not. Okay? All right, so let's introduce the candidates now. We have Bonnie Clark with the People's Alliance. Thanks for coming tonight, Bonnie. We appreciate that you're here. And then we have Scott Smith, Conservatives. Thanks for coming. And Chris Durrant, welcome. And David Coon, for the Green Party, of course. And Susan Holt for the Liberal Party. Okay, so there are your candidates. And you'll be able to inform your vote tonight. That'll be grand. All right, let's get going. I think that's all I have to say. Did anybody have anything to add to that? Jean-Louis, anybody? Okay. Let's get started then. Bonnie, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome, Granchi. I'm Bonnie Clark. I was born on Chestnut Street. I've got 5 brothers and sisters. I grew up here. I went to Albert Street School, went to Fredericton High. I worked a lot in the old hospital. I trained there. When I was older, 37 years old, I started back to university as a single mom. I was a single mom for 21 years. I have 5 children. And I got my bachelor degree from UNB, my master's, and my criminology from STU, and I went on to get a doctorate in child and youth studies. I'm very passionate about healthcare. I'm very passionate about youth at risk and seniors and getting our businesses back on the feet in Fredericton, in the province. What else can I say? How much longer do I have? Oh, 2 minutes. Okay.
Look at you go.
So, in 1986, I started an organization called Positive Heart Living, and I was very, very fortunate to have as my friend and mentor Dr. Everett Chalmers. We worked for many years together, and we tried to help people that were unemployed get back onto their feet. We were actually got large grants from the federal government, and all of our participants were paid, and they all finished their programs in 10 months. That was a really, really successful program, and we went on, and we still have Positive Heart Living, but it's a private business. We still provide services to veterans in all of the nursing homes in the area, and that's very gratifying as well. So I just wrote Purdy Palmer's book, Purdy the Magician, and I've written Paul Campbell's book as well. I'm an author now, and I enjoy writing, but I still love working with people. My mom passed away in November, and that's why I'm here. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Chris, I think I was amiss. I don't think I announced that you were the NDP candidate. Okay, so I'll correct that now.
Thanks so much.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Scott Smith. I'm the candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party here in Fredericton South. Thank you, Ron Tremblay, for coming. It's always good to see you out. So, yes, like many of the other candidates here, I was born here in Fredericton, went to school here, Priestman Street in elementary, and George Street, and Fredericton High School. Got my first degree here at University of New Brunswick. That was actually possible because I joined the military here in Fredericton in the local reserve unit, the Royal New Brunswick Regiment, which has got me through 23 years of a military career and allowed me to raise a family. It's also given me some other opportunities as your local recruiter, if you've ever seen me around recruiting for the Canadian Forces. I've supplemented that with some elected experience. I have been elected as a community leader 3 times, right here in the Fredericton area. And as chair of Wolastoq, I did some pretty good things for the environment, including promoting recycling in that community. Also established and rewrote a land use plan, which is pretty relevant because it also included a pipeline that went through it. So some interesting things we can talk about there. Also, I'm probably one of the only people here, or the only person here at this table, who's actually been an elected official on Fredericton's biggest green energy project. And I'm talking about the natural gas generator at the landfill, which I've had a lot of experience with, and I think is really important when we want to talk about the future of green energy. I've had an actual experience with that. I've also been able to lead the local mayors here in the Fredericton region to stop the export of our solid waste. Something that would have increased a huge carbon footprint, would have reduced our various diversion programs like recycling and the power generation, and would have hurt you in the pocketbooks by tripling your tipping fees. So I have some real life experience working for the environment. In that sense, I'm probably not your average conservative candidate. It's okay. So we're really hoping to have a good conversation. We can talk about this, and we can talk about ways and ideas that we can responsibly develop an economy here in New Brunswick and have one that is not only sustainable for the near term, but will last for the next 7 generations. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks, Scott. Chris, it's your turn.
Hi there. As she said, my name is Chris Durrant. I'm running for the New Democratic Party. I live on Needham Street. I work as a lawyer on King Street. As a legal professional, I've been very proud to do research for both the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I'm running for the NDP because I'm proud of the concrete ideas the party is putting forward this election. When Jennifer McKenzie became leader of the NDP, she saw that 30% of working New Brunswickers make less than $15 an hour. She saw that local businesses were suffering from poor purchasing power because people are making so much less. That's why she said that we are going to raise the minimum wage $1 a year until it gets to $15. And what was the effect? Immediately, the Liberal government, after being obstinate in raising the minimum wage, had to say, yes, we'll raise the minimum wage to $14 an hour. It's Jennifer McKenzie and the NDP that are changing the discourse in this province. We're putting forward bold ideas. We're the only party that's running on a carbon tax. We want to tax carbon at a rate of $30 a ton. That's what environmental groups have been asking for because they know that's what causes people to change their behavior. And we've got a clear plan about reducing emissions because we're telling you what we're doing with that money. 1/3 of the money would go to rebates for low and middle class New Brunswickers. 1/3 would go to building green energy projects like solar power and wind power. And 1/3 of it would go to innovation programs like retrofitting homes to make them more energy efficient. Brian Gallant wants to Brian Gallant and Susan Holt are running on a platform of relabeling the gas tax. That's not action. That doesn't even meet the low standard Justin Trudeau has set.
Can we stick to what you're going to do, please?
That wasn't in the information about what we were going to cause. I believe strongly in contrasting ideas. The Green Party is running on a plan to cap industrial emissions. And look, and I'm all in favor. I want to be the first person in line to hold the Irvings to account. But we can't pick on one sector in our economy and say that's doing our obligation to mitigate climate change. It has to be a province-wide effort. David has said that a carbon tax is just one tool in the toolbox. Yes, and I say the most important tool. That's not trying to fight climate change without a carbon tax is like trying to fix a sink without a plumber's wrench. If the NDP, when we go about fixing a problem, we don't leave any tools at home. We need bold leadership in this province, and that's going to take concrete ideas and the will to get it done. And as Jack Layton used to say, don't let them tell you it can't be done.
Thank you, Chris. You made good use of your 3 minutes. Okay, David, you're next.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Chief Tremblay, for your welcome. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to have the chance to spend a couple of hours with all of you this afternoon. I've been your MLA, if you're from Fredericton South, for the last 4 years, and I've had the opportunity to help many of our neighbors who are struggling with a whole variety of issues, but the number one issue that has come through the door in my constituency office has been affordable housing. People having a difficult time in our community trying to find housing that they can afford, living in rooming houses in terrible situations, and that is a huge need in this province and in the city. Many people on low income, poverty in Fredericton is probably more hidden than most other places in New Brunswick, but it's significant. And what I ran up against was so many people who were looking for help, not only to help meet their needs, but to help them navigate government, because they were running right up against government departments and their intransigence to help them address the problems that they needed addressed, to help them access the services they needed to access. And then the other thing, of course, with constituents is the issues that people brought forward that they were concerned with in the community, like Officer Square, like the UNB pool that was going to be closed for the last 3 years, and many other similar issues that I was able to offer some help to support and make a difference there. Now, we have a vision as the Green Party for a province that is community focused, that is fair and just, and that is sustainable. And being in the legislature for the last 4 years has really informed that thinking significantly, both in terms of the kinds of issues that constituents have brought to me and the kinds of policies I could see needed to be put in place, the kind of solutions that need to be put in place to address the concerns they had brought on a more systemic level, as well as the work I did on public accounts and debating budgets department by department, looking at what was being budgeted for the year and what had been spent the previous year. You get a really good handle on how government's spending its money, and you get a real good sense of how we could, if we're going to shift priorities to make real change, where those possibilities exist within the government system, and what kinds of reforms we need to bring to government to restructure so that government's serving people better, whether it's local development, tackling poverty, environmental protection, or health care. So it's going to be an interesting discussion this evening. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I'll turn it over to my colleague right here.
Thank you, David. You're on, Susan.
Thank you very much, Maggie, Grand Chief Tremblay, Margot, Jean-Louis, the volunteers who put this on. Thank you for hosting this event. My name is Susan Holt, and I'm the Liberal candidate for Fredericton South. I also grew up here in Fredericton in Sunshine Gardens, so I may have met some of you when I was scooping ice cream at Tingley's or bringing in groceries at Save AZ. I used to be a camp counselor at the YMCA Camp Glenburn down in the Belle Isle Bay, so I've had the chance to have this beautiful province in my spirit from an early day. Some of my first jobs included being a water tester at the provincial lab, looking for nitrates and water samples from all over the province, to doing environmental impact assessments on the Maritimes and Northeast Pipeline wet crossings for Washburn and Gillis, a local engineering firm here in town, as I was getting a degree in chemistry from Queen's University, and I also got a degree in economics from Queen's University. After university, I traveled the world. I worked in Toronto, I worked in Sydney, Australia, I worked in India, I worked in Ottawa, but eventually the pull came to come back to beautiful Fredericton. I love this city, and it's where I've chosen to raise my family. I have 3 little girls, Molly, Paige, and 11-month-old Brooke. So this is a city that I care deeply about, and a city that I want to see get better and better. So I want to tell you a little bit about the reason why I decided to enter politics. I think the world is changing rapidly in fundamental ways. The demography is changing, our environment and climate is changing, our economic systems are changing, and society is changing. And so we need a new politics to change with the world. Our political system hasn't changed in 100 years, and how we govern ourselves and how politics works needs to be modernized. I have an idea of how we can do that. I have been learning and working in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector, and for the past 3 years in the bureaucracy. I've seen how the sausage is made. It is not pretty, but it can be better. So I believe that we can bring open government to New Brunswick. We can be one of the first places in Canada to embrace the open government model and build collaborative policies together. The people of Fredericton South have a ton of ideas. I know because I've knocked on your doors. I've knocked on 4,932 doors in the last few months. I've had more than 3,000 conversations with you. I have been listening. I have been gathering the data from those conversations because I believe in evidence-based policy development where you listen to people, you take down their ideas. This riding is full of people with brilliant ideas and things that they need to share as we develop our policy. So I want to go in to the places where the decisions are made, open up government, bring forward a model of collaborative policy development that includes you, and help drive the kind of change that keeps New Brunswick moving into this future that is uncertain in a world where climate changes, technology changes by the minute. We need to change our politics. I think that I am the person who can do that, and so I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Now you have the chance to be really confused and wonder. Okay, I don't mean by your remarks. I mean, you've had a lot of good remarks here. Okay, all right, so we'll get started at the mic. It's your turn now. Anyone with a question, please come up to the mic. Pose your question. First, state your name and the area you're from.
I've got no idea where I'm from. I'm on Canal Street.
Are you
Fredericton South, next to the Fredericton Y. We have $14 billion in debt. We have enormous spending. What are you going to do to reduce the spending? When I was born, 1985, some of you would remember the interest rates that you paid on your mortgage, 15 to 20%. This is a nightmare situation for us with our provincial treasury. What are you going to do to avoid this nightmare situation with respect to our debt, which does have the possibility of bankrupting our provincial treasury?
Thank you for being succinct. We'll start the responses here with Bonnie.
Okay, thank you for your question. That is a big part of the platform of the People's Alliance Party. The debt for the province of New Brunswick being $14.5 billion. You know, we're paying, I believe, $2 million a day in interest on our debt, which is, it's ridiculous. I had a meeting here, my very first meeting, and I said, New Brunswick is like the Titanic heading for the iceberg, and I really believe it. It's time to put the brakes on, and it's time to stop going back and forth, blue and red, blue and red. It's time to bring New Brunswick into balance, you know, and we're going to reduce the tax to small businesses, and we're going to increase the tax to the big corporations. We're going to stop the big welfare handouts to these big businesses that are coming into New Brunswick, fly-by-nighters, and they take a big gouge of our money, bringing lots of times their own workers, and then they're gone, you know, and oftentimes we're stuck with more debt. So it's time for a change. It's time for change in New Brunswick, and I believe that the leadership of the People's Alliance Party understands that more than anybody. Just as a side note, right here in Fredericton South, one of the big problems here, we're taxed to death. We are overtaxed, and to even talk about a carbon tax is ridiculous. More debt for people. Right now, my husband here and we have a house on Gray Street. We got our tax bill, it was almost $9,000. We had 3 renters in there. You know, we're going to cut that tax in half. There's no need of it. And talking about affordable housing, there's so many issues, you just don't know where to start. But we need to start with that debt. And I believe that our party has good leadership, and they have a great vision. And they are going to bring this place into balance. And just to give them a chance and look for the change.
Thank you. I don't know where you sat, but was your question answered? Here.
Guess I'm up. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, whether or not I agree with the policy, I guess is irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she spoke to the issue. and I
Okay,
was really-
Scott, your turn.
Okay, thanks. And thank you for that question, Brandon. Obviously, the debt is an enormous problem. However, I disagree that taxing is our best solution out of it. We are maxed for tax. We are not going to raise a single penny in new taxes because there's enough as it is already. We're seeing fewer and fewer people in New Brunswick getting taxed more and more. There's enough money in the system, we can pay for services if it's managed appropriately. When I was on the Fredericton Region Service Commission, I chaired the audit committee where I introduced control measures for public spending, public funding. That's exactly what we need now in New Brunswick. We need to get a grip on the spending, get a control of the deficit, and put downward pressure on our debt before, like what Mr. Kirby described as the nightmare solution, or nightmare situation, where interest rates go up to 15%, and then we're in a real big problem. Right now, our interest rates, we pay more in interest than we do to the Department of Secondary Education, Training and Labor. That's, if the interest rates go up more, we will be paying more than we do for all education. That's just in interest, that's just money going down the drain. So we need to get a control of this. And there's lots of ways we can do so. For instance, we saw in this past government where people say, where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? There's nothing needs to be cut. It just needs to be spent with some common sense, like you would in your own household. If you spent money like this government, you'd be out on the street and lose your house. So we want to just make sure we have common sense spending. For instance, we paid a Nova Scotia company more money to tear down a covered bridge, more money than a New Brunswick company would have cost to rebuild it. So right there we spent more money, we farmed out our money, sent it outside the province, and we removed a piece of New Brunswick heritage. Just a simple decision like that, we could have paid our own company to do that job, collected the taxes from their income, and maintained that heritage and use that as part of the tourism strategy. So once we get a grip on all these things, because that is the foundation of our house, so that we can house all these other things like house care, healthcare, and education, and develop an economy, we need the proper foundation to do so, and we want to be able to start reducing taxes like the double tax, which actually affects the low-income people in this riding. Thank you very much.
I don't know what my rule, am I supposed to say yay or nay?
You should actually, what we should do, I think the best thing is to stay at the mic until your question has been answered.
Okay, well, Scott, you gave a commitment. Hey, why not? That's great.
Yes.
Chris.
Well, certainly, so we need to get our financial house in order. For too long, the government in this province has been, the thumbs of the big corporations have been on the scales when it comes to tax time, which is why we have a 13% corporate tax rate. PEI has a 15% corporate tax rate, as does Nova Scotia. I've never heard anyone signal those provinces out for not having a business environment while New Brunswick does. So we would raise that corporate tax rate. Additionally, we do need to spend our money better, and we've seen the attempts at subsidizing businesses in this province has always gone awry. You just need to look at AtCon. We need to, when investing in our small and medium-sized businesses, we do need to do it more like a bank, so we get the proper returns on our interest. That's why the NB would create, as France is doing, and other countries in Europe are doing, a New Brunswick investment bank, where our money for stimulating economic growth would be managed by bankers, like bankers. And so they would be lending based on the goals of making sure that it was a viable business, and that the government would get a return on its money and possibly even equity in the company. No more giveaways to friends. But it's also about exercising, spending our money well, is not taking short-sighted solutions like the privatization of healthcare. We've seen with the privatization of the management of the Medivie program, our home health care workers are getting paid less for their mileage. The knock-on effect is people in Dopetown and Boys Town can no longer get home health care workers to come to their homes. And what happens? They end up going to the hospital or the nursing home sooner than they need to, and that results in more costs for the healthcare system. So if we're going to save our financial house in this province, we can't take shortcuts. We can't think that selling out to private companies is the way that to save our money.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
I don't know what I'm supposed to, like, do I give like this real...
No, you don't have to evaluate. We just, no, that's fine. No,
Yes.
as long as your question is being answered, that's all that's required.
Okay, well,
Okay?
I will not respond.
Okay.
Thank you for the numbers.
All right. Susan, I'm sorry, David, almost missed you.
Thanks. I'm with the Auditor General. We need a plan to stop the debt from increasing and get the debt down. That's critical. She's been pleading with both the Conservatives when they were in and the Liberals now to establish some targets and put in place a plan. And neither party has done it. We would put in a plan. I would like to see it be an all-party plan because I think we need to collaborate in the Legislative Assembly on these big, important challenges. So to put that plan together, we need to do a little bit of an inquiry into the revenue side. Have we got just tax policies? I don't believe we do have just tax policies. There's no point in making decisions on spending when our tax policies are unjust. Is everyone paying their taxes? I don't think so. We've got offshore accounts that we know that the Irving companies put their money into, so they're avoiding lots of tax. So we need to look at revenues. We need to look at, are we getting a fair return for the timber that we sell off of the Crown lands? No, I don't think we are. In fact, in our costing on our platform, we added about I think $100 million over 4 years to get a fair return on our timber as revenue. What about tax breaks? Those aren't even published. So we need to we would start off by making the tax breaks transparent, both for individuals and for companies and corporations at budget time, so everyone could see what the tax breaks are, and we can have an adult discussion about which tax breaks make sense or in the public interest and which are really just gifts to benefit special interests. So, and then on spending, you look at the money we give away to large profitable corporations. $21 million committed to Toronto Dominion Bank in just the last year, and that wasn't the first of it. And if these guys get back in, it's not going to be the last of it, that's for sure. So we need to look at spending from that perspective, and we would take out that funding that is going to those large profitable corporations, cut it in half and redirect the rest of it to support small business enterprises, co-ops, and social enterprises. And sort of along the model that's been used in Nova Scotia with a small business loan guarantee program.
Thank you, David. Can I ask if everybody at the back can hear? We're good with the mic? Okay, good. Susan.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question, Brandon. I think if I'm clear, the question that you asked was, what would you do to reduce spending? I think that was your question. So I'd love to address that directly because it's something I think, well, I can speak personally to this because it's something my household has just gone through. I have an 11-month-old, so I've been on maternity leave. My income has been cut dramatically in that environment, so our household has had to reduce our personal spending to match the fact that our incomes are lower. So we've looked at what can we get rid of first? What's the easy stuff? Where is the luxury spending or I don't know what you call it, but the extra stuff? How often are we going out for dinner? Did we rent too many movies last week, or do we need our Netflix membership, or that kind of thing? Once the easy stuff is done, then you get into the bigger stuff, and you have to make some hard decisions around whether we want to put our daughter through piano lessons. Now we're getting maudlin, and I'm going to take this over to government. So this government has done that. We acquired just about $600 million deficit when we started government in 2014, and we've brought that down to $115 million deficit, so almost a $500 million reduction in the deficit. to the point of the surplus that the Auditor General pointed out. That was achieved through a lot of different things. Small things like that water lab that I told you that I worked at after my first year of university. That's been consolidated with a number of other water labs and transferred over to RPC for savings to government. We had a number of call centers operating all over the province delivering different services to New Brunswickers. They have all been brought together in the name of efficiency and savings to reduce the cost for us to deliver that. So that's generated savings. We've frozen salaries, we've reduced staff, we've shrunk government in certain departments, we've cut budgets in other departments. We've looked at solutions like, well, I'm sure we'll talk about tonight, putting together telecare, ambulance, and Medivie extramural services to try to find savings so that we can get to a balanced budget, because that is absolutely a priority. And we are closer now than we've been in New Brunswick in 12 years. And so I think that there's been significant effort made. I think the low-hanging fruit is gone. I think there are tougher decisions to be made about how we continue to constrain spending. And I want to point you to one thing that we're doing that I think is really exciting. We're modernizing how government delivers service with something called a digital ID. So we're looking to move services online to the handheld devices that many people in this room have, so that you can get your medical information through your handheld device, your education results that way. It'll reduce cost to government and improve services to New Brunswickers.
Thank you. All right, are you happy that your question has been addressed by these parties?
I am happy.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the center stage, but the gentleman behind me, Mr. Charles LeBlanc, I think is really excited for the microphone. So
okay, thank you for your question. Charles, don't forget, it's 2 minutes.
Don't worry, I'll be short.
Okay.
My name is Charles LeBlanc. I live in downtown area, 145 Westmoreland. And to save some time, you don't have to ask me if my question has been answered, because if not, I'll see you after the meeting. My question is very simple. There's just 3 parts. I'll make it right short. There's a lot of, I wasn't going to take the mic, but there's a lot of people that's too ashamed to talk to the candidates or the local politician. They think that they don't think they have a voice. Number one, why don't we have a provincial jail here in Fredericton? We could build a new building for the retired politician to be appointed as judge. They just cross the street from the legislator, and the Centennial building is right there. Number 2, why do we not speak up on prisoners forced to walk home and given their sentence here in Fredericton? They're sent to Miramichi, the youths are sent to Miramichi, the women Miramichi and St. John. They give them a Google map and say, walk home in the storm. And number 3, people are dying behind bars like Tyler Sweeney and Caroline Warnock that was begging for her life in Miramichi. No coroner inquest, no nothing. So what's your opinion on that?
Okay, thank you for your question, Charles. Scott, you can start.
Thank you for that, Charles, and definitely appreciate your passion, because those are some pretty good topics, really. I remember when there was a jail here in Fredericton, and now it's a science museum. I'm not sure if there would be any enhanced efficiencies to having being able to incarcerate people right here in the municipality or not, but certainly if there was efficiencies, either fiscal efficiencies or just delivery of service, certainly it'd be worth considering. As far as prisoners have to walk home, no, that doesn't sound right. I mean, this is good grief. I don't know what we could do to address that. But that's a good issue, Charles. I mean, these are things that people are not talking about. So I congratulate you for bringing those up. And in terms of treatment of prisoners with these things, coroners, inquests, now that's something I do feel really passionately about. Because I remember the Ashley Smith case very, very well. And that was a case where someone was just ignored. And these people who are incarcerated, they are for reasons, but they're still humans. There are people with mental illness who are trapped in a cycle. There are people with addiction problems. There are people who just never had the choice between a right decision and a wrong decision. So we need to make sure that when we are incarcerating people and we are putting people in these kind of circumstances of jail, that we're doing it humanely because Canada is a civilized country and we need to reflect that in all our actions. Thank you for bringing this up, Charles. Merci beaucoup.
Charles, you brought up something I care very strongly about. I'd say, to broadly define what I think about prison, is I'm a prison abolitionist. I don't think this is a goal we can meet immediately, but I feel like prison is a place where people get worse, they don't get better. It is one of the cruelest institutions in our society, and we need to find solutions. I've been in prisons, not as a lawyer. I've been in the Baffin Correctional Center in Iqaluit. It is one of the worst prisons in our country. When I worked for the Ontario Ombudsman's office, we were one of the only phone lines that people in provincial prisons could phone to us. And I heard about their experience with under-caloried food, with violence from prison guards, and prison guards who I also understand work in dangerous conditions because of these corrosive institutions. I think we need to find more ways of keeping people in the community, so we don't have to truck people around the province to these industrialized facilities. Certainly, I'm aware of the stories you're talking about of people just being chucked out of institutions in Miramichi, forced to walk home. In my law practice, I have people who are arrested wrongly based on incorrect information from our justice system and were brought to Miramichi and then left to muster their minimal resources to try to get home. I don't agree with you. I agree with you so much that this needs to be a bigger priority in our system. We need to look on reducing incarceration. We need to look at why we are criminalizing sex work and putting more the most vulnerable people in our society into this kind of orbit of criminalization. Thank you so much, Charles.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks for the questions, Charles. 3 questions. How did you get that? I don't know, but you got it. First question. A jail in Fredericton. Well, it seems like a good idea. What I would do is look at, well, why did they not replace the jail when they shut it down in Fredericton, and see what the potential is for putting one back. It's not a bad idea when you look at the distribution of jails around the province. Secondly, in terms of transportation for people when they're released from jail, absolutely. We've got sheriff's vans running the roads in this province all the time between courthouses and the different jails, and people should be able to be transported back to their community in a sheriff's van rather than being let out on their own to fend for themselves. Some folks don't even have the real capacity to fend for themselves when they get out of jail because we're incarcerating people who are mentally ill. That's their only crime, and it's not a crime. So it's insanity that we need to address mental illness in a fundamental way here. We have a very rudimentary system for mental health care in this province. We would fix that by doubling the budget of the mental health care system. Yes, it's going to cost more money, but we've got to do it. We've got to tackle mental health and addictions in this province, and that's going to cost some more money. So we're committed to that. Finally, as far as people dying in jail, we don't use the issue of the tool of coroner's inquest very much in this province. And we need to use coroner's inquest for unexplained deaths every time, including those unexplained deaths in jail. Obviously, if it's clear someone died of a natural cause, a heart attack, or whatever it is, that's one thing. But if it's an unexplained death, there needs to be a coroner's inquest, and it needs to be public, and the results and recommendations need to be made public.
Thank you for the question, Charles. I agree with a few of the things that actually have been said already. So I'm with Chris around the need to reduce the amount of prisons and incarceration that we do in New Brunswick, because I don't think that it is the place where we help improve things and make society better or safer. What I think we actually need is better collaboration between all the different pieces of the system that are at play, because there are pieces that aren't connected. So if you look at what the RCMP is doing, what the public safety officers are doing, the police, the coroner's office, the sheriffs, the people who are working in mental health, the people who are looking at transitional housing and homelessness. There's a whole bunch of pieces here that don't connect currently and end up with people on a cold highway outside of the Miramichi when they shouldn't be, which also highlights a problem that I think David touched on, which is a lack of transportation solutions here in this province. We do not have great ways to move people around the province, period. Regardless of whether there's a sheriff's van available, and a transportation solution for the province that helps people get from our less populated areas to our more populated areas to other less populated areas would really help us with the modernization of how we deliver services here. To your question specifically, so as for a jail in Fredericton, I don't know enough about why there isn't one now to be able to give you a firm answer of whether there should or shouldn't be one tomorrow, but my instinct is that we shouldn't, because I haven't heard a demand for more jail cells. And in terms of how we address the prisoners that were unjustly left on the side of the road, I think the Ombud, Charles Murray, had some great points around this when he was looking into it because of the complaints that came to his office. So Charles and the Ombud's office are a great tool to get some insight and to manage the public conversation around how we fix specific problems like that and make sure that the Sheriff's Office, the RCMP, the people responsible for public safety, the people responsible for service delivery to prisoners are all at the table finding the solutions that will work so that we don't see that ever happen again.